Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mind Refinery podcast, made by us, the Mind Refinery, creators of content, aggregators of popular culture, and the place where creatives go to thrive. I'm your host, Kyle Bodanis. This week, we're going to look at Sam Mendes' latest epic flick, 1917. This podcast will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, and you absolutely should see it, you've been warned. Next week on the podcast will be the first episode in a reoccurring series of shows examining our favorite movies of the 2010s. Each member of the Mind Refinery podcast team will explore their favorite film of the past decade, and we'll do a podcast for each one where we'll explore our thoughts on the flick, how it shaped its cinematic decade, and its current relevance. Next week, we're starting with my favorite film of the 2010s, The Social Network. And if you're not already subscribing to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, please do so, and if you dig it, feel free to give us your finest reviews. And now, without further ado, here's the show. Okay, guys, here to discuss Sam Mendes' movie 1917, we have Mind Refinery creatives Andrew Van Eek.
Hello.
John Neal.
What's going on?
And Andrew Lanza.
How's it going?
So before we get started, guys, obviously we lost Neil Peart from Rush, and we're going to dedicate this episode to him. And then at the end of it, we're going to have a little talk about just what his music meant to us and just, his work in general. So, guys, let's get right into this. I went to see this movie with Andrew Lanza, and the anticipation was so high that we actually forgot our pre-film libations.
That's actually 100%
It's 100% correct.
We're too excited.
We're like, we didn't smoke. Oh.
And then we just dealt with it.
Is there a word in Klingon for loneliness? A nukta. This movie, I mean, at the end of it, all I could hear was Andrew Lance's sobbing. And then I realized that I could also hear my own sobbing.
I had the sniffles.
It was my bronchitis. This movie.
Everybody was coughing in that movie.
Everyone was coughing in the movie, but we'll talk about the experience in a minute. What I want to do, guys, is let's get right into it. Let's talk about our first reactions. I personally, my jaw was on the floor. It was fantastic. I just love this movie. What do you think, Andrew Van Eek?
I liked it a lot, and it's growing and counting. I really want to see it again. I was hoping to get a second viewing prior to the podcast, but it's an experience.
Yeah.
And I think just first thoughts, I've just never seen a war story. It's the anti-apocalypse now, because it's this like journey film, but instead of taking this epic amount of time, it's fast. And it's like in
direct.
Real time. It's almost in real time. It's direct. Like it just, you feel like you're not, it's not 1 minute of screen time is like 2 weeks in film time. It's both just like actually literally, but also just how the movie flows.
That's interesting to note with the Apocalypse Now thing, because a movie like Apocalypse Now spends a lot of time in its thematic elements, which is its strength. But this one, it's the ticking clock starts right away. John Neal.
It's incredible. There's not much to say, honestly. It's just, it's awesome. It's Sam Mendes' best movie probably since Road to Perdition.
We're gonna get, and you know what? We're gonna get into if it's peak Mendes. But Lanza, you were a mess at the end of this movie.
I was blown away. I was jazzed.
Yeah.
After that movie, I was super excited. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Like I couldn't agree more. I got to see it again before it leaves theaters.
Yeah, me too.
It's it was seeing it at theaters too was definitely a good experience. So much fun.
Yeah, heavy recommendation to experience that movie the way it was meant to be seen, for sure.
Yeah,
big as screen as you can with the best audio you probably can.
Audio,
it's
yeah,
good.
So John, you mentioned so this whole thing was based on stories that Sam Mendes' grandfather told him, and he wanted to, put it together and do this story. This was a huge passion project for him. I'm going to ask this, very bluntly: is this movie peak Mendes?
I don't know. Maybe, might be.
I mean, the whole kind of one take is definitely not like that's new for Mendes doing it the whole kind of like almost the illusion of the entire movie in one take.
Yes, and you know what? It's funny because he said, and this was like that was a big debate that him and Roger Deakins had cinematographer Roger Deakins had prior to starting it. He came up and was like, "Listen, I want to do this thing in one take." They had done it for the opening scene of Spectre, and they had actually mentioned a lot that Spectre and Skyfall, like they couldn't have done this movie without it, and it really influenced kind of what they were doing, and they were kind of worried. And Roger Deakins' initial concern was that, like, is that going to be, you know, a gimmick, this idea of it being one take? And then Sam Mendes was very much like, no, it's for the story, it's necessary. And then when they started getting into it, they obviously saw that, you know, especially if you're doing something like the First World War, that's a very, its scope is very big. You know, you have death on an unimaginable level, massive conflict, and then, but you needed to suck it into these two people trying to accomplish this one mission. And I mean, that kind of goes to some of the thematic elements, this idea of individual people, you know, making a difference in this massive conflict. And I mean, I really thought that shooting style really worked for it. Like, I wasn't listening.
I don't know. Well, like, let's say that it wasn't shot in first person. If it was just shot like a regular sort of movie, there's nothing new about it, really, right? Like, it changes the whole way that you experience these two guys and what they're going through, right? Like, if it was just shot by shot,
I disagree. I think it could have worked if it was done in
it would have been probably a good movie, but the effect that it had,
so you're just bigging up the effect.
Yeah, like, that's a huge selling point of the movie.
I think the story, the sound, the acting, everything still would have held up 100%.
It would have. I'm not saying that
I think it would have lost tension. That's the big thing.
Yeah, it would have lost tension. I think that was the right way to go. But I'm just saying each one of those individually would have held up on their own. I think.
Yeah, they would have, but it wouldn't have had the same effect.
But I feel like when you, because the one thing, I think the strongest element of it was the fact that this movie goes right into it, and immediately the
kicks right off.
It's like they're in it. They're sitting down. Boom. We need this guy. We need Tommen Baratheon over here to, and we'll get into the actors.
Tommen was pretty Tommen.
Yeah, Tommen was pretty Tommen, and he ends in a very Tommen way. But and the idea is it ratchets up tension. And we were talking earlier about Dunkirk, and one thing that's great about Dunkirk is the amount of tension it exerts onto you at all times. It's a different ticking clock and a different kind of tension because it's done through the cutting, so that you're always either ramping up to something happening or it's always happening, right? Whereas this one ramps it up through perspective and through all of these things happening, and these guys got to try to snake their way into this through this massive conflict. Also, what I like about it too is it narrows the trenches. It really, like, visually narrows them down and then keeps you in them. Like, I think the thing that I think wouldn't fit into it, because I can kind of see what you're saying, is that there's such strengths in some of the other not tertiary, but like, what am I doing? Am I shifting?
I'm just going close to the mic.
Sorry, guys. I wasn't talking to the mic. It's one thing that, just moving my mic a little closer. I think that, it really brings home that tension through, the visual side of, through the thing, and it narrows down the trenches. And I think it wouldn't be as good and as tense and as compressed if all of a sudden you were going to sprawling vistas and like massive set pieces, like over and over.
It made
it
personal.
So
that's
So circling back, and the choice to do the one cut, and then because you're doing the one cut, the natural steady cam or dolly shots, all the tracking shots, everything like that. That is just that made the trenches so much better because you are snaking through, but the camera is literally also snaking through, and like the amount that added to the story was just huge.
Yeah, it made them so claustrophobic. And that first time,
so claustrophobic.
And that first, you're in it with them the whole first 10 minutes of the movie, and then going over the top with them. Yeah, you're cool. Going over the top with them.
And how crazy was that? Where you start in this behind the lines by what would it have felt like 100 meters or something like that, or 200 meters, and it's all chill and dude smoking and there's this thing, and then it just gets grosser and shittier, and within like 10 minutes of the film you're busting over that wall and you're in the just one of the worst times you could be at in human history if you were just plopped somewhere.
Yeah. And you get a sense of also, like, these guys are smoking, but if they just, like, stand up a little taller,
they're
getting shot. Like, they get shot in the fucking head.
Yeah, right? They're sitting there doing their thing, but if they would...
Yeah. Like, I think Deakins said in an interview that he did that it literally said at the beginning of the script, this is a one-shot movie. Like, it literally made the point of saying that. So.
And they had to do a lot of preparation for it. Like, because Deakins was like, well, at first he was like, why are we doing this? Because, he'd seen it before, but then obviously as he started getting into the story with Sam Mendes and, and really what is going on, he was like, he saw it, but then came the massive amount of preparation for it. Like, they did a lot of preparation for this, because they were worried about how long it would take, staying on production schedules. You know what I mean? Like, what are the difficulties we're going to go through? We'll get into some of kind of the innovations too that were that came about this, because there was different camera bodies that were assembled by Arri, all this kind of stuff. But I mean, let's get back to this idea of Deakins. Sorry, not Deakins. Sam Mendes. What is this? Where does this stand amongst, amidst his films? Like, is this his best work?
I really want to see it again. To kind of take it in again. It's up there.
What's the competition?
American Beauty, I'd say it'd still probably be.
I think it's better than American Beauty.
Definitely a good argument for it. I think
this is a
Road to Perdition is still my
yeah.
favorite Sam Mendes movie.
I'd say Road to Perdition would be the only one that would, in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love you. John got me onto Road to Perdition.
That's
I
my
had never
favorite
seen
one.
that movie until you in school.
You know what? That's true, because
you lent me the DVD.
Because I originally, my grandfather was like, I saw it and he's like, good action, and I'm like, it's gonna be like Hard Target. It's gonna be like Hard Target. Jean-Claude Van Damme.
It's another Die Hard.
It's Die Hard 7. But then I watched it. It was incredible. Paul Newman.
Yeah, Paul Newman.
R.I.P. Pour one out for my homie.
The thing I
Paul
like
Newman.
about it the most is Tom Hanks plays a character he never.
He's
plays.
out of his comfort zone.
So
really
I don't know, like that kind of like I love that movie. So, but this is probably his best as far as just from a beginning to end. Like, it's a jaw-dropping movie
because it adds the ambition. Like, it's super ambitious.
Going back to the whole one-shot thing, that's his also decision to do it. But what I like about it is we've never really seen it like that in a war movie before, and I think that's where, to me, like, it adds to the genre by doing that. So he's added like his own sort of take on it, and it's a standalone take, and I really like that about it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
One thing that I did really I thought the pacing was absolutely spot on.
It was great. Yeah.
Because as you were saying, you started off and you're just in the shit like right away, and they ratchet up that tension like all the way through. But then they give you those nice little moments where you were in the town in the basement with the woman and her adopted child at that point, and you just had these like nice moments where it was just like this, like you could breathe.
Where you happen to have fresh milk. We're not getting
exactly.
You're not getting away with that for me. That one was there was a couple moments that,
dude, you'll take it, man. And then more that's milk, man. That's
because the cow had the fresh milk, and then the baby needed the fresh milk.
Honestly, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it.
I'm unfine with that.
Why don't you? Why do you want babies to get their milk?
Why do you hate milk?
I love milk and.
Are you telling me that you want the babies to get milk in a more natural way?
Yes.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I don't know. I thought it was a nice connection. I'm not. That didn't even stand out to me.
See,
for a second.
There was a couple. I don't know if it's a time in the podcast to talk about those things, or is that later?
What are you trying to bring
about
up?
Things that we didn't like?
We will get to it.
Okay.
We will get to it.
Hold off on that.
So that's and then for me, American Beauty is really at his like thematic best, working with the actors. I think like if you were to say him as an actor director, what is his peak? I would say it's American Beauty. When you're talking about visually his best, I think it's Skyfall. I think he elevates a James Bond movie to. I think he just kind of realized that dudes like Chris Nolan and stuff are kind of taking this idea of taking something that's supposed to be almost kitschy, but then adding real ideas to it, and adding real grit and intensity, and I think he does that well. I think Skyfall visually is the best leading up to this, because this movie seems like a natural progression visually from Skyfall.
Yeah,
because there's this actually kind of segues really well into the Roger Deakins conversation about what we think peak Deakins is this peak Deakins, which is really hard to kind of deduce from there, because there's so many fantastic offerings. And I don't know, like in terms of the visuals, like how do you think this ranks among other Deakins works, John?
I mean, I don't think it's peak Deakins. I thought I already saw peak Deakins with
Assassination?
Blade Runner. That was, to me, that was like, okay, that's peak Deakins.
And you know what's funny?
But no.
I would say peak Deakins is Assassination of Jesse James. To me, that's like quintessential Deakins.
Oh yeah, sure. And there's a lot of things in this movie.
I mean, peak
too.
maybe is the wrong word. That's like saying,
Yeah, I mean,
dude's how old is he? He's like 70 years old.
Yeah,
Dude hasn't peaked yet.
the only thing
No.
He's edging.
But no, he's edging.
He's edging.
As long as his mind stays intact, he'll be fine.
Well,
He'll continue to push the envelope.
Yeah,
right?
I think
God love him.
Well,
Yeah.
obviously Roger Deakins is a genius. I mean, the probably only issue, my thing with, like, I think I have problems separating the rest of the movie from the train robbing scene in the assassination of Jesse James.
So iconic.
Like, it's like the movie. I can't watch that movie again. But I'll watch that train robbery over and over and over.
I've seen that movie multiple times.
See, for me, the rest of it is dry. But that, like, this guy puts a 6K on just a moving platform, and that's how he's shooting the train. And then you're just like, of course, that's how he's shooting the train. It's like it is absolute, absolute genius. And him not winning an Oscar for that obviously was just another example of how the Oscars are completely ridiculous.
Well, I mean, didn't it go to Elswit for There Will Be Blood?
No, I'm still giving it. Yes.
I'm just saying.
I don't even remember what year it was.
No, you're right.
I'm just saying I can understand that
He's
one.
He's good, but I'm giving it to.
But There Will Be Blood, though. I don't know. That's all I'm saying.
I know. It's so good.
But I agree. The Oscars are bullshit, but in that one respect.
But if it had gone to him, would you have been, that is a robbery?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Of course not. It's fucking Deakins.
No, because I think what happens is when you're working with skill at that level, it's like a jump ball. You know what I mean? Like it could go, it could go either way.
But you know what kind of reminded me a little bit about that sequence with 1917 and just the way the shadows move is when he's running through the town and it's all lit by
with the flares.
When I saw that, that was the
insane.
moment in the movie
Incredible.
where I was like, okay, this is amazing.
Fucking.
But that's like every movie that he does.
What was the motivated light? Like, where was the light source in that scene? And then it actually kind of took me out for 1 second because I was like, what am I seeing? Like, where's this?
They use real flares. Am I wrong?
They did.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We're
That's what
talking
I
in the
thought.
town. No, but
Yeah.
then it comes to the church. There's like this low hum light, and I'm like, that's a little bit looks like a lit set for like 2 seconds, and then they come around the corner and there's this like building on fire. It was like, Jesus.
When he comes around the corner,
Yeah.
and then there's the enemy soldier, and he just looks at him.
And he waits, and he's so stunned, and I'm like,
what
was
are you
good. That
doing?
was awesome.
Get out of
This
there.
is kind of what I
But
like
he
about
was all messed up because you got to remember
I know,
he just got knocked out,
I know,
right?
I
And
know,
I
I know.
appreciated some of those inputs
was
of
real.
realism there.
This is kind of why I think it is there is an argument for peak Deakins here, only because it's like
Culmination.
all the things that were used on other like Deakins and Tunic and even Sam Mendes for that matter projects, like they came into this. So you're getting the idea of the flares lighting in, all that. You get that kind of lighting in assassination.
Gorgeous.
You're getting like when they had that fight with the soldier, like with it silhouetted. That's like when he was fighting the sniper in Skyfall. The one taking aspect, they directly reference the opening scene in Spectre, which has an awesome like oneer to open it, and it's like all of these things kind of come together. And it's like he took everything and really like kind of tossed it together, and like just the level of innovation, because like Deakins is a crazy on the engineering side as well. Like they were developing their own like gimbals and stuff for the camera. They were like Arri had to physically create different custom camera bodies just so it could fit into some of the small
What
spaces.
a flex.
Yeah,
What
like
an absolute flex. Yo, Arri, can you do me a solid? Just invent shit.
Well, and this is why I like that approach to it, but whether like James Cameron, it's like you're never working on the film. It's like I just spent 15 years trying to make this technology.
And
Deakins
now
is
I'm going to just like put a thing
and
together.
now we're
going to
release it upon an
technology the other
unsuspecting
way.
world.
Yeah.
But it's suspecting because we've been anticipating it for fucking 15 years. But like with Deakins, it's like, let's make some films. Let's get this practicality. Arri's like, yo, let's do it, Arri. When James Cameron comes up to a guy, he's like, hey, let's do this. So like, okay, that's not even going to be ready for 14 years anyways. And I love that, I love that there is that level of understanding like and changing the physical, boundaries of the equipment itself, like to really get in there.
The other thing I wanted to mention was the production designer on this movie is Dennis Gassner. Dennis Gassner he's a Canadian, by the way, but he also did Blade Runner with Deakins, and they the sets in this movie were incredible. And the I don't know if you guys saw any of the behind the scenes stuff they did with the models. on this stuff
for 1917
yes,
or for
1917.
No, I didn't.
So they built all the so once they kind of mapped out how they were going to shoot it, and then they built the sets after that so they could match exactly what they were going to do. They built everything in models, and they actually played it out. Cool. But the cool thing with the collaboration anyway between Deakins and Gassner was kind of cool when they did the flare scene, is they actually built that set on a model scale and lit it with like lights on wires that went like over top so they could actually see.
Where'd you see this? Is it on like
Look
YouTube?
Look it up on YouTube, yeah.
Sick. I know what I'm doing tonight.
Like
when you just explained that, I felt the same way Forrest Gump did when he saw Lieutenant Stan's legs.
Yeah.
Magic legs. I'm like, magic set. Magic set.
Anyway, that's amazing though.
That is incredible.
Just
that's
that
so
collaboration.
Well, it's a level of detail that is just is unreal. And you know what is also good? Like when they're walking, when he's walking and the whole town, is on fire in the background. That's coming from the Blade Runner thing where everything is
orange.
Yeah, orange and like misty from like either sand, whatever. And it was just so well done. And I think it's a culmination of of all his work. I hope I can't see him not getting nominated for this.
He also did Skyfall and Road to Perdition, by the way.
Yeah.
Dennis Gassner.
Oh,
he did Skyfall.
He did Skyfall too.
I thought you meant Deakins. I'm like,
no.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dennis Gassner.
to loop those two things in though, so I think if you were going to say that it was Deakins' best work, it's completely related to the production design. The strongest part of this film is I've just never had seen a film that makes you feel like you're trapped in the place. So like besides like a claustrophobic like one room type of movie, like this is like you are stuck everywhere you are there. You feel like completely trapped
in every way.
Even when you're like in an open field leaning against a tree, you still somehow feel trapped, and that's like both of them together.
This is another reason why the way they did it was good. Like with the first person, one cut, no cut situation, is that it kind of really, really funnels you to where you need to go. Like you do not feel like there's tons of options here.
It's just like the story, right? Like it's just super direct. It's laser focused. It's like Mad Max Fury Road or like The Raid. It's just like, we need to get this message here. Go. Like you have till tomorrow.
Well, it's form equals content, and it classically.
I love that.
Right? It is. They're like, what is the setup visually and artistically that we have to do in order to convey this? That's why when he said trust
everything
me,
supports
story,
it. Yeah,
exactly. You know what I mean? Because something like that can totally, even if it is Roger Deakins, if something like that is applied to the wrong story, it is absolutely a gimmick.
It's absolutely Then it's like it's exact. Yeah, it's a gimmick. I couldn't have said it better. Perfect.
But yeah, shout out to the camera team on this.
It was
there's some Deakins and his team that are just
they must have worked. Dogs.
There's that one shot when it's going over the water.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know.
That shot blew my mind. I was like, how?
Also, how many times did they take it off the crane and run with it
simultaneously
and then put it back on a crane and it move again?
Lance and I were talking about that after. We're like, because we were talking about, remember in True Detective, the big fight scene? And how like it follows in season 1 and all through it goes through the fight and then it goes over the fence. Like in the making of, that's a handoff of a movie. That's one guy walking up steps that they built, handing the movie to another guy, and then it continuing. And
this movie,
we were wondering, like we were trying to look for all of the little, what is?
Did you call it? I think you also called it Gateway.
Did I call it Gateway?
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Shout out to
Gateway. If you haven't seen John Neal's final student film, he was crazy.
It's unlisted on YouTube.
It's unlisted on YouTube.
I watched it recently.
There was dollies on cranes. There was guys holding cranes. It was intense.
Guys, this was gonna be his ultimate thing.
This is going to
for
be
all of college.
This is going to be my fucking third encounters.
We all had to just
we had to deal with it.
Get those jibs out in the soybean field.
Get those jibs out in the soybean field.
So
fucking get it done.
And so one thing I would like to, moving along, one thing I'd like to look at is the performances. We have Dean Charles Chapman, who last time we saw him was jumping out of a window because his mother killed his wife in Game of Thrones.
Looked like he aged like 6 years since then.
Yeah,
I feel like they just cut and pasted his baby face onto a slightly larger frame.
He got a little pudgier. That's about
they
it.
They just did the motion cap. They just did motion cap stuff for it.
like the Winklevoss.
yeah. They had Army Hammer playing. They had Army Hammer playing his body. The Winklevine.
The Winklevine.
When he calls him the Winklevine. That's just the amazing.
That's
okay, that's for another time.
But I thought he was great, and the guy who played Will, George McKay. I mean, Mendes said he wanted to go, with lesser-known actors because he didn't want any of the baggage coming into of previous actors. What have they done into?
If you had put Tom Hanks in there, it's not the same movie. We're going against Private Ryan. We're gonna make a new type of war movie. It's gonna be Tom Hanks going through these trenches. Yeah, it would be so weird.
And I thought the guy. I mean, obviously both of them did a really good job. I thought Dean Charles Chapman was good in Game of Thrones, especially when when he became more prevalent, in the role after Joffrey gets friggin' iced.
So I was just gonna say, I did not see his death coming. I thought that was fucking awesome.
Okay,
I did not.
He goes to help the German soldier and the German pilot, and he just gets fucking shanked.
Yeah,
wow.
And
I did not see that coming. And then I'm like, oh, he's gonna be fine though. And then I'm like, no, he's not gonna be fine.
I thought it was when the other guy cut his hand, and in terms of actors,
I thought he was gonna lose his hand. He still might
because he's so the Tommen actor. Sorry, what's his name? Dean.
It's Dean Charles Chapman.
Dean Charles Chapman. He's so nice and whatever.
He killed John Lennon.
I was maybe not going to believe him getting through it, and I right away started realizing one of these guys isn't making it pretty quick in. And when he cut his hand, I was just like, oh, this is foreshadowing.
And
this guy's
stuck it in a body.
Oh man, how good is that? That was so bad. That's visceral.
Yeah,
I feel like he's losing that to gangrene pretty quick. In the next week, that hand is not doing too.
The one that touched the body.
It's gonna smell like almonds.
Yeah, it's like
it smells.
Because you put your hand in, and then you just pull out
Well, it's the bacteria that are already going to feed
Spanish
on human
flu?
flesh. It's the right ones. You know what I mean? Normally you have a bit of a chance of whether or not you'll encounter the bacteria going to give you gangrene. But
I kind of thought he stuck it in, and then there was a later point where he's like, "Ow, my hand," and I thought it was going to come back to it, and it never really did. Am I wrong?
Well, he wrapped it up a bit later, didn't he? I thought he did something else with it later.
I don't know.
This guy was swimming in rivers with bodies and stuff, man. This guy's got bigger
Boyan
things
says he disinfected it with whiskey.
He did.
Yeah, that's what I thought he did. Because later on, he does something with it. I think. Anyway, it
doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't know why we're focusing on his.
I don't know. You just made a comment because it was
I
just
thought
such
he did.
an amazing.
Because I thought he did a good job with it, right? Those nonverbal reactions are important.
Yeah.
Say you're okay.
Oh, half the movie's nonverbal.
Exactly. So they gotta ramp it up. So I think it's pertinent, if you will. I believe it's pertinent.
It is pertinent.
What is that guy's innards like? Not good.
I think,
yummy.
So where we're going with that is that when he died, his character just getting taken out, the fact that he was so soft and innocent and then just died like that was just a really blunt, effective way. Yeah. And I did think somebody was going to die, and I thought it was the other guy.
That was going to be at the end,
and then I was kind of disappointed because it's the brother finding the brother, and then instead it's fuck no, it's not that nice.
How good would it have been if the brother was Joffrey, though?
I wish.
If the brother, what's the kid's name? I have no idea.
Oh, Jack.
I'm happy.
Gleason.
It's Jack Gleason.
Yeah,
I'm happy. It was Rob. I'm happy it was Rob.
Yeah, but he keeps getting screwed over, Rob.
He does.
Rob Stark. We're gonna get to the epic amount of British actors in this movie.
But on the subject of the cast, I actually liked how they kind of sprinkled in all these other stars just in these small roles.
Yeah.
Like Benedict playing, the guy at the end, and even Colin Firth.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought on the epic British actors.
Who is the guy, the last one that sends him off over the wall? The guy that's got all the attitude.
Okay, we are gonna get
Fleabag.
Yes, we are going to
amazing.
Hold off on that, guys. Hold your horses. I want to talk about.
You're not holding
I
horses.
want to talk, guys. A lot of horses die in this movie too, don't they? Or was that War Horse?
Let's have a moment of silence for those horses.
War Horse was atrocious.
Oh, no.
It was bad, and then they made a play about it, and I'm like, how did they do? Who cosplayed that horse?
Is that the one with Daniel Radcliffe?
I think it was.
He's naked.
So one thing I want before we get to the extended British actors.
So we get a hold of Anik.
I know this guy's out. This is like in class when we used to have to leave the room.
Yeah, exactly.
So the guy who played Will, George McKay, I want to focus in on him too, other than the incomparable Tommen Baratheon, because I thought he was incredible, especially this idea of Tom is the more idealistic, we can make a difference soldier, and he's the one who's like, screw my medals, I don't care about them, I got rid of them, it's just some tin, and he plays ribbon. That. And ribbon, it was tin and ribbon. And I thought that he pulled that in so much, and then was also like the way his character takes up that mantle when he dies, after almost like kind of wanting to leave at the end. I thought that performance was fantastic.
And asking the brother if he could write to the mom, that got to me. That whole scene. I mean, this segues well into our. I just want to make sure we gave our boy George McKay is due. But George McKay, yeah, shout out. I thought he was probably the
Brilliant.
best. I mean, he was the focus of the movie, but I thought he was by far the best.
He was the casting on that was spot on, and again, the idea to go with someone a little lesser known. Incredible. I
haven't seen him in anything. I don't think
exactly.
He didn't overact a single time either, and there was such potential when you're silence, action, like physically acting, and then you've got this epic line to get that right. That's
nonverbal acting is pros from the amateurs. Like that's those nonverbal, like are you conveying in your face
nuanced
what's going on? Yes, it's nuances, and like it's not like theater acting, man. In film acting, you have to be like at
small.
Point blank
it's
rage.
Very small. Theater's
and
very
it has
big.
to be subdued, and I thought it was incredible.
Huge boost to his career too.
Yeah, I can't. I like honestly, he's gonna be. For sure, he's gonna be picked up to that's definitely gonna be a springboard for him for other big things. Let's move on, guys, because we did talk about the incomparable Richard Madden, aka Rob Stark, who defeated Tyrone.
So Stark was the brother?
Yeah.
I found that out like when you brought it up earlier and you said like I'm glad it was Rob. I'm like, was it?
It was Rob Stark.
It was Rob Stark.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Remember he beat Jaime Lannister at the Whispering Woods, and now he's in World War I. That's what you get for winning.
Didn't he get like? Oh no, that was the other one. Never mind. Wait. He got at the Red Wedding. Good Game of Thrones spoilers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Game of Thrones spoilers. If you haven't seen season fucking 4,
just stop watching after 6.
Yeah, stop watching after 6. It's a whole different thing. Anyways,
oh my goodness! If anybody happens to be listening to this podcast and you're gonna watch Game of Thrones, just watch the first 6 seasons and it'll be the best show.
And just imagine what happens after.
And then just imagine, or switch back to the books and then get.
Yeah. Let that thing where where if you see like a partial circle, your brain will auto connect the rest of it.
Right.
It's going to be better.
It's like that. It's going to be
whatever sad fan fiction you have in your brain, it will be better.
I've literally written like borderline fan fiction in my head that is significantly better than the ending of that movie. And most of it is relationships between Tommen Baratheon and the mountain.
Jeez,
grooming.
So back to.
So let's get back to the. The favorite secondary. I have written it as favorite secondary performance by an epic English actor. We talked about Richard Madden. I mean, I thought all these guys, and what you're talking about, John, you mentioned the lovely gentleman from Fleabag, Andrew Scott.
Yeah.
He plays the hot priest.
That's before they go over the wall.
His is awesome. Like he was
so
really good. Everyone was laughing at his. He's just like
he's good. He's a good actor. Well, me and Lindy randomly put on Fleabag one night.
What's Fleabag?
It won a bunch of awards at the Golden Globes this year.
It is an incredible show by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She is absolutely
Amazon show.
Fantastic.
Who's got a login for me?
Anyway, he plays he's got like a big part in that show. I didn't even recognize him in 1917 at first, just because he was so like believable in the part that he had.
Yeah, he was great. Honestly, like again, going back to that scene with the lady in the church, I thought she was really good too.
Claire de Burke, she is fantastic.
Sorry, I don't know her name. Claire de Burke.
No, it's okay. I have to. As host, I have to have a certain amount of preparation, but you can bring the hijinks.
Okay, cool.
That's cool.
That guy, that character, the way he brought it too. I just feel like that's something that's missing from a lot of war movies, because when you're like on a crew of any sort of working crew, even our film crews, there is always that guy that kind of like there is that big male, like the things are clearly absolutely fucked around him, and yet he's still just acting like a total hotshot, like hilarious.
It's like, yeah,
right? And that's real. Like that's real. I know like 1,000 dudes like that, and they're never in war movies. It's always so somber or a buffoon. If they're not somber, they're a buffoon. And then it's like
we're on set and the craft truck is in a ditch, and it's like some guy's like, well, just another day. If you don't like it,
right?
Fuck
like,
off.
And not everybody's gonna be sitting there like crying about it.
Yeah, I love. I mean, my favorite was Benedict Cumberbatch at the end, because
I
was originally, because they were kind of ratcheting up that he was going to argue with
make sure there's a witness.
Exactly.
I think that was one of the best lines in the film too. That was really powerful because
I thought that was like a Chekhov's gun, like it was going to be.
And it was. They went back to it because he's like, get out of my foxhole.
I guess I thought that they'd be like pulling him away and being like, no, I was like, no. But
actually,
you know what? He kind of did. They did it enough so it wasn't ridiculous and didn't make me have a heart attack at the end of that emotionally draining situation. But especially when he's like at the end, he's like, all right, go have something to eat. Fuck off.
Get cleaned up. Yeah. Fuck off.
Fuck off. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, he's good at anything. As soon as I saw Colin Firth, you know what I mean?
It's a big.
Mark Strong is in it too.
For having the small actors, there's also kind of some pretty big.
That's what I liked about
really.
Because they all happen at key moments in the story too. They
all
pop up at like.
So you can't really say there's no stars in it because they're not really just cameos.
Where's the stars in this shit?
Plot wise, they're so significant. Yeah. They're almost like checkpoints. It's like
Colin
you make
Firth,
your way through the snakes and ladders to a star.
Colin Firth starts the mission, right?
And he's the perfect to do that.
So dignified. From Fleabag sends them over the wall.
Yeah.
And Mark Strong gives him a lift to where he's got to go after Tomlin dies.
It kind of reminded me of like a Medal of Honor video game where you like get to another level and the special guest voice actor is there, and it's like, oh, here's Gary Busey, but obviously with significantly more talented actors.
That's actually pretty spot on.
Yeah, but see, like you mentioned Mark Strong, I loved Mark Strong. I love that whole scene with those guys. Because you're like, are these guys going to start giving this guy a hard time and all this kind of stuff? And then like they almost like rally around him when they find out what he's supposed to do. And then you get that sense of there are moments where everyone's like, fuck off, and they're worrying about themselves. But then there's also these moments of this Britishness together. You know, we're in another place and trying. And I thought that he really ushers that in. You know,
and think of how much like time all previous war movies we've seen spend developing and nurturing that within their story, and then this one it was just there. Like they didn't have to like I don't know I can't even really understand how they did that so
in a
fast.
Relatively short scene as well, like
within a short scene, not even like a whole like we've been walking together, you know, for
getting a car out of a ditch, like you said, like
yeah. It's crazy, but it was completely natural and completely believable.
Yeah.
And it works in the war setup too, because like you're always going from place to place, division to division. There's all these intricate moving parts, and you kind of see even in that. That's kind of what I liked about it, because it doesn't like, because we talked about how it narrows the focus of the shooting situation, but it also like they were able through character to show the size and scope of the war, you know. And I thought you know Mark Strong was great. Again, going back to Claire de Burgh, who played Laurie, who was the woman with the baby. I thought that was really a really good breath scene.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, and I thought they were really good with like putting the breaths in where it's not where it's not ridiculous and boring, because you have to, again, with that shooting style, you have to watch or how can you be careful doing that. But she was fantastic. It was very understated, and this idea of the baby not belonging to her, but she's just taking it. Again, cool. This idea of like shared experience, and it was
also in a movie that's moving and has like these checkpoints. There's like a little mini story there, and that is so telling. Like, we actually know in that scene with that little amount of time spent with the characters, we know that it's not her baby, and then you're thinking about how she came about it,
exactly,
and like that whole thing and everything.
And she doesn't even know the name, right? She's like, "What's the name?" And she's like,
she's just like, I started taking care
of
this.
So it's not even
baby.
Like, oh, I'm the aunt or something. It's also, like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
She just like found this baby.
Yeah. The communication between the two of them is also done really well, because it's almost like the understanding is one way. Like, she can understand a little bit of English, but he can't understand any French. And that would have been a really hard thing.
I feel like he could understand a little bit of French.
A bit, but like the way
broken
they
words,
treated
but
that.
she more understood the English. Yeah. But I think they conveyed that very.
No, it was well done.
That would be that's a hard thing to do, right? And that's pretty realistic, I think. I'm imagining even in 1917, where like you can go to some country and just speak English and assume that somebody's going to get a word or two.
Yeah. So I want to move on from that, guys. And before we get into where we think this is in the pantheon of war movies, what didn't we like about this movie? The milk.
Vinny's hating.
I got a question.
Okay, so
was it 2%?
No, so hold on. I loved the milk. No, it was whole milk. It was whole milk,
That's
non-homogenized, because it
like
was unpasteurized. It was in a pail. It was fresh and warm.
Love the milk.
Dude, they got a government stamp for that?
excellent.
Absolutely not. It's good.
So here, hold on.
Milk?
No, yeah. If you, guys, we're in
With
Canada.
vitamin R?
Now with vitamin R?
Guys, Milk Council's going to show. We're talking about raw milk. We're going to get shut down in like 2 seconds. They're a powerful lobby in Canada. I don't know about the States.
All right.
But,
They're like worse than Scientologists.
Yeah.
All right. Edit this part out.
Okay, edit this part out.
We love
seriously,
milk.
I loved, actually, about the milk. I loved that scene when they found it and whatever. It was such a cool breath, like you guys said. And so I didn't think it needed to be brought back. That just kind of bothered me, and it took me out of a movie that.
That's so funny. Yeah, to me, it's like it did not even. I'm just like, oh, that's nice, milk. He has milk.
In my head, I'm like, he's got that fucking milk. I'm like, does she have any milk?
But I also thought, I'm like,
he's got that shit in his cantina.
I was like, how bacteria filled is that milk though? Like that canteen's not clean.
Yeah, this guy probably had fucking
That's
whiskey
actually-
in it before. Yeah,
and like he's putting like milk from like a bucket, and then it's been like sloshing around all day.
Listen, it's either that or no milk.
Listen, I mean, okay, you're right.
Okay,
give the baby the milk.
Do you want botulism
I
or
was just
milk?
about to say what
It's
the
not
baby
my
has
kid.
now is botulism.
Guys,
You
I'm
give your
just
kid the
saying
milk.
it's either that or no milk.
Okay.
They say also, fresh milk is like got a ton. Like that shit is.
Yeah, it's
will
been sitting there in a
cure-
French bucket
cure
for
anything, right? Like there's
all right,
all
big
sorts
milk.
of.
This guy's fucking the milk lobby over here. They
Yeah.
got you, bro.
Yeah, calm down. This guy's got unpasteurized Stilton in the
What
back
do you
of his
know
car.
about milk?
I did.
Your milk stash is showing.
And then let's move on to. Yeah.
All right.
So,
Yo, for sure, this guy had one of those Doug Gilmore posters on his wall where he had the fucking milk legs. Dudes don't even like hockey. Got that shit.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else we didn't like? Like,
Okay.
I'm hard
Hey,
pressed to find
I got
something.
I
another
literally can't think of a thing.
I'm
I can't
obviously
think of,
nitpicking.
yeah, I was gonna say if you're
obviously
only
nitpicking. This
Nitpicking's
is a great
acceptable.
film. Another thing, the epic moments, like when he's going over the waterfall, some of the parts that were like a little unbelievable, like big action moments. I just wish they were scaled back 10-15%, just because
that's fair.
the
That's fair.
spectacle is already so intense. This is already so unbelievable, but totally believable, and there was such realism in this film that I didn't think you needed to go. Yeah, they could have took a little off the top.
no, that
on some
whole
of the
like
action
whitewater
parts.
part where he's going down the rapids, I was like, okay, like I get it. That was a little bit
Okay,
long.
that I
That's-
didn't need. I'm like, are we going to a water part?
Yeah,
When
yeah.
he got knocked back and knocked out, like
I was okay with it, but it was a bit long. If we're really gonna nitpick and split hairs, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that sequence was a bit long.
why did he get? But see that it was fun too. It's just I'm talking like specific action points within that scene. It's just like make the waterfall a little bit smaller, or like when he.
Well, I mean, he was crossing
gets
the
knocked back.
river or whatever over like the broken bridge, and he's like getting shot at and shit.
He shouldn't have been out for 4 hours when he got knocked back, because I'm gonna tell you, if you get knocked out in a concussion for 4 hours, you aren't making like cognizant. You're not like making good decisions.
He's in a
and
wheelchair
running around
getting to the-
afterwards.
He
You're
just
like
needed
in the
a nap.
hospital
He
for
just
3
needed
months.
he just needed a quick 3-4 hour nap, man.
Right, so like
We've
why
all
couldn't
done it.
So why could he just been dazed there? Anyway, again, this is nitpicking, but I think that if you had, there's a couple parts that are unbelievable in real life where everything else was so believable that it kind of just jumped out on me.
I'm
Also,
sure if
I think he could have taken that guy out in the room a little easier.
Yeah.
Than that.
Yeah.
That guy shouldn't have got a shot off.
No, he had a sniper too. Like, did he pull out like a handgun or something?
I don't know.
I
I
don't
felt
know.
like he shot him with the rifle.
Yeah,
with the rifle.
I don't.
I'd have
I
to see it
honestly,
again.
I feel like probably if I watched it a few more times,
Yeah.
I could probably pick out some stuff I didn't like. But I was just so engrossed in it and so along for the ride that I was just like, yeah, hit me with it. You know what I mean? I'm not like nitpicking every little thing as I'm watching it. I'm just so engrossed by the film.
I'm with Lance on this one. I definitely want to see it. Well, I want to see it on a bigger screen.
I gotta see
with-
it on a
with-
bigger
with better
screen.
sound. But I
All right,
definitely wanna see
that's
it
what I'm saying. Let's go IMAX.
Yeah.
Let's also not forget our pre-movie libations.
Yes. This time we won't forget.
I
We were literally
also-
like sitting down about to get getting our jackets off, all right, are we gonna get pop? Who's getting pop? Then also
It's like,
like,
wait a second. Am I baked?
This is when
No?
you two went to see it. Is that what
Yeah.
They were like this to each other.
I saw it sober as well. The chances of 3 of
We
us
forgot to smoke weed. We were so
I saw
excited to watch
sober
it.
as well.
Yeah. When Boyne just asked when the last time that actually
Like
happened
when I was 12.
I don't know,
Yeah,
like 1989, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
I mean,
Yeah, like the Little Mermaid. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. So, okay, guys, I want to move on to the final point here, which I alluded to. Where does this rank for you guys with war movies?
War movies.
Like, for me, I look at it especially from its British counterparts. And immediately, because the last great war movie I saw, I think all of us saw, was Dunkirk.
Yep, for sure.
And as I was saying before, like I thought both movies do a really good job of ratcheting up tension in different ways.
Completely different ways, but both effective.
But both super effective. And also there is something super English about both of these things. Not just like the fact that like the entire cast of Love Actually is in it. It's not Love Actually, but just as an example. You know what I mean?
Love Actually is a solid flick.
7 out of 10.
We're not going back.
7 out of 10.
It's a
Okay,
solid
7 out of 10. If you please reach out to us on social media if you disagree with that.
That's the best Deakins movie, though. I'm kidding.
So, like for me, it's immediately put against, and then it's put against Dunkirk, and they're both two inherently. Obviously, Dunkirk is something that's mythical in English, in English history now, but also this idea of the shared experience in the First World War, and wanting to do your thing for country and wanting to save other soldiers. And, I think it comes at that Englishness and doing it, in different ways. So what do you guys think about that?
That's such a hard sort of list to kind of think about. But what I like about it is, as far as like, I guess the way that it's told in terms of the one shot, it's kind of happening in real time. I mean, I don't know if I've seen another war movie do it, like I was saying before, do it quite like that. So in that respect, it's like, I don't know if you can really say it's the best or it's close to the best, because there's so many other ones that you can think of that could be on that list.
Especially since if you look at older war movies, there's a lot of kitsch to them, but I found, especially in the last 20 years of war movies that are coming out,
we're in like a renaissance of war movies. That's what I'm thinking, and it was like ushered in by Saving 100%. Private Ryan, in my opinion.
It definitely changed the way you looked at that.
But then there's also war movies like, is Schindler's List a war movie?
And that's what I was going to say. Are we talking pure movie? Because then I'm going Glorious Bastards. Is that a war movie? I don't know if it is. It's pretty high. It's in my top 5.
What about movies like Patton? I think we talked about this before. Patton's a war movie, and that's a great.
I mean, obviously the best of these movies all have like a larger thematic element.
Yeah, but I think if we're talking about like pure combat, like war movies,
strictly war movies, Saving Private Ryan is the benchmark. Or
we're in the war. This is like, I don't know, like it's really good.
I think it's right away got to be up there.
I'd give it to this or Dunkirk are probably the two off the top of my head. And also, if you want to go older, for me personally, I love Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah,
Full Metal Jacket is probably my favorite, at least of like the Vietnam.
For me, it's like Apocalypse movies. Now, Metal Jacket.
Apocalypse Now is good, and it's like visually amazing, but like, man, it's a slog to get through.
I agree with that. I also think that there is no other movie that encapsulates the horror and like what war is on the human psyche.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm not saying it's a bad movie.
With that said, though, I'm also like up my ass for that kind of thing. Like that's what that's why I'm like spoon. I'm like, take that shit, put it on a spoon, shove it in my face.
You guys freebase it.
Especially,
I love that.
Especially you guys' choices on those ones, though. It kind of makes sense. We're all like film nerds, so the war movies seem to be trending. If Dunkirk in 1917 are example, like you're moving away from Saving Private Ryan, valor, like all the big themes, everything like that, and moving into these more like they're films, they're like stories, like really, really heavy on the story and less about the whole big picture and grandeur on it. And then that would be Full Metal as well, right? Like it's a movie nerds movie.
Like I would probably
it's a film critics movie.
I would probably put this above Saving Private Ryan personally.
I would too.
Oh, absolutely. So. Saving Private Ryan is good. Don't get me wrong.
The first 20 minutes are what everybody always talks about when we're talking about Saving Private Ryan.
It's a long movie,
and I don't want to talk bad about it because I love that movie.
And that last scene too, like the taking of the bridge, is fucking fantastic.
Yeah,
there's like,
it's
I mean, it's Spielberg,
What are you gonna do?
It's better than Warhorse.
It's better than anything. Better than We Were Soldiers.
Okay, can I get a quick shout out for Enemy at the Gates though?
Shocking stuff.
Enemy at the Gates.
Enemy at the Gates is solid.
Not one of the greatest war movies of all time.
No.
Amazing.
That's what I'm saying. Like a quick Enemy at the Gates.
Yeah. I will do scenes. I'll do scenes from it.
It's true.
Jarhead.
Jarhead's
guys,
fantastic.
Shout out to Boyan on technical.
Yeah,
Jarhead is one of the few movies. Only Jarhead and Whiplash are the only two movies in my entire life that I watched at home. And as soon as it was done, I was just like, "Yeah, let's watch it again." And like I as soon as I finished Jarhead, I was like, I gotta watch it again.
It was really good.
Like in order, like you sat.
Yeah, back to back. Same with Whiplash. The only 2 movies I've ever done that like on a first viewing.
And I love that Jarhead. It gets into that first half of like Full Metal Jacket type where it's exploring the idea of just being
bored,
being in the culture of the military rather than in the conflict.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I also don't think how many World War I movies.
Well, there didn't.
Have you seen off the top of your head?
I was actually just
Paul Gross
thinking
did
that.
one.
Oh my God!
Passchendaele?
I went to the TIFF premiere of Passchendaele, and listen, I will ride for a Canadian filmmaker because I wanted it to do well. Terrible.
It's not good.
I didn't. It was not good. Terrible.
A war movie is a hard. Listen,
it's hard.
That's
it's
more
hard.
bigger. That's not a slight to somebody who tried and it didn't work.
You got to
so
finance.
well.
That's incredible.
A movie is hard to make in the first place.
Props.
A story is hard to make. All of this is like not guaranteed. You can have all the best people in the world and make a total steaming pile of shit. And and then a war movie is a whole other level of that. It's budget sucking. One just to be
extras
there is just
fucking.
It's
everything.
It's difficult. It hoovers cash. So, so I think it's more big ups to Sam Mendes for making this wonderful flick.
Yeah. Good call. I completely forgot. When we were talking about Mendes movies, I completely forgot about Jarhead.
That's a good call, Boyan. Yeah. Jarhead. Okay, guys, we got to wrap it up. Thank you very much. And if you haven't seen this film, get out there and do it. It's incredible. And then listen to this podcast again. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, guys, as mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, on Friday we lost a legend, a music legend, a Canadian legend, probably one of the greatest drummers of all time, probably the greatest drummer of all time, Neil Peart. Guys, let's talk about what his music and his skill meant to us.
Well, Rush is my favorite band. My uncle introduced me to them when I was probably like 11 or 12, I think. And I don't know. I just immediately took to their music. But I was also into drumming before that because my uncle was a drummer. So that's where he kind of got it from. And so when we started listening, that was pretty much all I was listening to from that point forward for a long time was.
And what does
Rush.
What does that mean to you? And you just so we know, just so we can tell you guys, Andrew Van Eyck and John Neal, both drummers. Like as drummers, what did his music mean to you? Just in terms of.
Yeah, I'm not as big as huge of a Rush fan, but I do respect like one of their hugest contributions to music is like bringing technical proficiency into pop music, because a lot of the times like there are better studio drummers, there are scores of them actually, than Neil Peart in terms of just the technical. There are no better drummers that bring that skill into a pop song without making it a drum solo. And like he has the drum solos, but he also where other drummers would be forced to just go to a very, very simple 3 drum, just boom, tsh, boom, tsh, 4/4 beat, he finds a way to bring all sorts of syncopated rhythms into that without sounding like, hey, look at me. That's what Neil Peart did. And that's like, that's crazy. Like Danny Carey's like the only other person, and then even Tool
drummer Danny Carey.
But it's a Tool drummer Danny Carey. But even it's a way bigger, the way they're already doing weird stuff. You know what I mean? It fits in, so it's an easier place to experiment. Which Neil Peart did that in their rock and roll songs.
Yeah, I was just listening to, before he died, I was listening to A Farewell to Kings. And you know what? Honestly, that record is so bloody magical. And on the title track, Farewell to Kings, we talk about the majesty, the kit, the massive kit, but there's parts where he's just, floor tom, snare, hat, and incredible.
Yeah.
Like just even on those, like without all the bells and whistles, right? Like you see the hardcore skill that he has and the production value that he adds to it. It's like every song is Star Wars because he just adds this majesty to it, building out, from the snare, the floor tom, and it works incredible. I mean, like for me, like my favorite standout thing, I mean, I love Xanadu, obviously. Xanadu. And
we're gonna need a headphone warning on that.
We're gonna need a headphone. Yo, Boyan, can you do me a favor and make sure that's mixed properly? I like my vocals just scooped EQ. And
make it spicy.
And Cygnus X, Cygnus X1 again, another like tour de force. I listen. I've been listening to that. I used to steal my family's records. Like that's what we do in the Bodanitz family. We jack each other's stuff. Anyways, I stole my uncle's copy of Farewell to Kings. I, as of yet, have not given it back. That was 25 years ago. It's just incredible. And then seeing them live and seeing what they can do, it's unfortunate that this happened.
I think when I was a kid and I was listening to it, it was just, trying to, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to play like this. But this is the greatest drumming ever. But then as you get older and you start, the songwriting also is another thing. He wrote all the lyrics, minus their very first album. But I think just in general, as you get older, you just appreciate the skill that it takes to put together a song, to write the lyrics, and then also to, bring the drumming to the forefront of the band without it seeming like it's at the forefront of the band. Yep. Because the other two musicians in the band, Geddy Lee is one of the greatest bassists of all time, and Lyson's probably the most underrated guitarist.
That's the only way I think a truly good drummer can survive is in, like, for example, John Bonham and Led Zeppelin. He's surrounded by Ginger Baker and Cream, surrounded by musicians at a really high level.
But also what's so amazing about, like, if Neil wasn't part of the band at all, it would still be an incredible band because of the other two.
I mean, even the first record is
incredible. Working Man is one of my favorite Rush songs, right? But then by adding him, it took them to the next level. That was what put them over the top and made them something special.
And they're part of it. They are the biggest three-piece.
Yes.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you can find it. Like, how is there so much sound there from just these three musicians? And obviously the drummer can't just be relegated to keeping time if that's the sound that you're going for. He's got chimes, he's got everything.
I don't.
It's just how they fill.
I don't think there's a power trio. Like, the closest I can think of a power trio that can do that is again Cream.
Blink-182.
Okay. Yeah, Blink-182, Enema of the State.
Blink-182, but that's a lot of production too, right? These guys make that sound. It's pretty much
the closest to having that level of bombast is Cream. I mean, they were direct influences. I mean, like, if you listen to, especially Geddy Lee talks about Jack Bruce again. Neil Peart talked about Ginger Baker, who we also lost recently. But I think that's spot on. Like, where's a power trio that's doing that? I mean, let's talk about favorite. What is your memorable Rush track for the drumming track for Neil Peart? Let's finish off with that.
What's that one song? It's there's no lyrics in it.
Like YYZ?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, YYZ.
That's sorry, I'm a casual Rush fan.
No.
That is my favorite Rush drum.
Hey, for the record of this podcast, you do not have to like Rush, because a lot of people cannot stand
like I do, but
there's a lot of people like me that like respect the hell out of them, but are not throwing the records on all the time.
Also, I had one question just about, you guys were talking before. I just wanted to throw this in. When they play live, is it just them three? Do they have any accompanying?
No, I've
seen them 4 times,
and they never had a.
And they never just like a guy on the.
I saw them twice. They never had a session.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. I know a lot of trios do have like the extra guitarist on the side.
Because you know what, it's tough, and I think like what Rush was able to do is they were able to modify their sound for a 3-piece, and you have to give that thought. Like, for example, other 3-pieces that are famous, Nirvana always brought in Pat Smear. You know what I mean? Like so it's hard to fill that sound. I think they did a really good job of just like organizing it, filling it, understanding what effects they needed, allowing and because of the skill of, especially of Neil Peart, you can add elements without
without expanding.
He can do little things. You know what I mean? And it's funny about Geddy Lee's voice, because when I was younger I hated it, but then you know what it is? I heard Xanadu, and it. And then I'm like, that's a good application. Like, this is good. Again, my Cygnus X1 for me is just like seeing them play it live.
It's so hard to pick one, man. Just because
especially you. I thought you were going to be. I was like, is this guy okay?
I've seen them live.
We were doing wellness checks on John.
Yeah.
I've seen them 4 times live, and I started, the first concert I ever went to was their Snakes and Arrows tour, which was their second last album that they did, which was 2012.
It was a solid album. I remember.
Clockwork Angels.
It was good.
Clockwork Angels was their last one, and that to me I thought it's one of their best albums. I think just as a complete album and kind of their body of work kind of summed up. in that album. But what I like about them is they've gotten older. Specifically, the drumming is, at least from a live perspective. If you listen to some of their live albums before, a lot of the things that a lot of people don't like about them in terms of their eras, or like their electronic era in the 80s, a lot of people have a difficult time with some of the sounds that they've had.
A lot of cocaine,
right? But just the electronics,
synths.
Right? Like
it's synths. It's like, how are you using synths?
What they've done is now, because they've,
I wonder if Rush ever did any coke. I don't know.
Mostly weed, probably.
Yeah,
But
they don't strike me as
Getty
the
Lee,
type.
but,
They're nerds. They're like super
they're
nerdy.
super nerds.
Dude,
Like
they're
weed,
real nerdy. I don't know.
weed,
I have no
with
idea.
a kimono on.
that was
that's not
9 out of
coke-induced?
10 non-Japanese people who have kimonos.
I could see
do
Geddy Lee
cocaine.
being straight edge, and I wouldn't surprise me one bit.
But anyway, as far as their
Honestly,
sound,
I don't know.
As far
I don't know. I have no idea.
As far as their sound goes, they've now, because they've gone more acoustic in their latter years, they've gone back to that original kind of sound that they've had. It just sounds heavier because they've done more of a live kind of feel to their albums and their studio albums now. So their 80s stuff, it now sounds more acoustic when they play it live, and that stuff sounds
They
way
contemporize
better.
it. They make it
To
more,
me, it sounds
yeah.
way better just because it's got that sound to it. But I don't know, favorite track. The first time I heard Tom Sawyer, that's an incredible drum. Just a drumming track on its own for the drums is one of his best, and he always says it's always hard to play every time he plays it. La Villa Strengato, though, is the one track for the drums that
pretty epic.
Every rock drummer, if they can play that track, then they're probably going to be okay.
Hemispheres, correct?
That's correct.
Hemispheres, yeah.
They're probably going to be okay if they can play La Villa Strengato on the drums.
Yeah.
If they can get through that 9-minute song on the drums, they're going to be okay.
I remember when I was I was at your house one time, and then all of a sudden you start busting out your skills on a drum kit, and I had no idea, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, John's a good drummer.
Yeah, John Neal's secret talent.
Yeah.
He's a fucking amazing drummer.
I haven't played for a while too. Like it's been
I
a
like
little
to
while.
play.
The last time I actually really played, this guy had an electric drum kit at the house that we all
I'm
used
sure
to live at.
you still rip.
Filmhouse 2.0.
I'm sure you rip. No.
I can.
And one thing about John is, I have to say, finishing up here, that
We also need Van Eek's favorite song.
oh yeah, give us your favorite
Give
song.
us your favorite song.
I got you, dog.
I'd probably, for the drums, I'm thinking agreeing with John on the Tom Sawyer, just because it's wild. I got nothing more.
Wild.
It's wild now.
It's wild.
I was thinking I was going to go into a whole other thing, but it's not even.
Anyways, to wrap up, John is always, it's funny. John is always listed. It was funny when we realized that he could drum. I'm like, those hands can move that quickly. And
this is side note. I was even more amazed when I saw that Kyle could play the guitar, because I've known a ton.
Well, that's what happens when you have flippers for hands.
Music nerds, and this guy all of a sudden just starts like ripping the Master of Puppets solo. He's like trying to figure it out, and I just see his hands go like that.
I didn't know that.
And here's what
you won't believe your eyes and it just won't.
I used to carry my guitar around everywhere with me for years.
So what happened?
I started writing and doing a Mind Refinery podcast. But one thing, and listen, this is, and
Talking to chuckleheads about Rush.
and finally finishing this, but this is kind of what I'm talking about here. What's good about someone, why a guy like Neil Peart is a legend, is because he just started this conversation. And it goes everywhere. And the best musicians, they make you talk about music and analyze music and talk about your good times with music. So I think there's no better way to kind of encapsulate what Neil Peart meant to people. He's a Canadian legend, and he's a music legend, and the greatest drummer who ever lived. And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say he will be sorely missed. So pour one out for your homie, Neil Peart.
R.I.P. Neil Peart.
Thank you, Neil.
Peart.